January 27, 1945. High above the Pacific Ocean, the sun rose weak and pale, filtered through layers of thin, brittle cloud. At 30,000 feet, the world was drained of color and warmth. Metal contracted. Breath crystallized. Sound itself seemed thinner, as though the sky could no longer carry it. Inside a Boeing B-29 Superfortress, one of 62 climbing toward Japan that morning, the temperature hovered near 50 degrees below zero. Frost crept across plexiglass windows like slow, moving veins. Oxygen masks hissed steadily. Every man on board understood that this would not be a routine mission. I have read hundreds of combat reports from the Pacific Air War, but this one has never left me. Not because of its statistics, nor its claims of destruction, but because of what it reveals about a single morning, when the sky itself became a carefully calculated killing ground. This is the story of the most disturbing B-29 mission I have ever studied. A mission that turned altitude into vulnerability, technology into a liability, and the air over Japan into a death trap. At 11:42 a.m., as the bomber formation climbed through 28,000 feet, Staff Sergeant Robert Chen crouched behind the central fire control station of his aircraft, a Superfortress designated A-52. He was 22 years old. He had flown 11 combat missions over Japan. He had never seen an enemy fighter fall. Chen was the youngest gunner in the 497th Bombardment Group. His hands rested on the controls that linked him to 4 remote gun turrets spread across the aircraft's fuselage. Each turret carried twin, 50 caliber machine guns, 8 barrels, thousands of rounds. And yet, at altitude, none of that felt reassuring. The B-29 had been designed to fight from the stratosphere. Pressurized cabins, remote-controlled guns, computers that calculated lead angles automatically. On paper, it was the most advanced bomber ever built. In practice over Japan, it was learning hard lessons. Since November, the 73rd Bombardment Wing had been flying from Saipan. The pattern never changed. High-altitude precision bombing. Temperatures so cold that hydraulic fluid thickened and mechanisms froze. Jetstream winds so violent that bombardiers struggled to hold their aim. And every single time, Japanese fighters climbed to meet them. By mid-January, 31 B-29s had been lost to fighters and flak. 340 aircrew. Entire crews erased from the sky. The worst losses came on January 14th over Nagoya, when 5 Superfortresses were destroyed in less than 20 minutes. The lesson was unmistakable. Just as German Panther and Tiger tanks had once taught American tankers about the limits of armor, Japanese interceptors were now teaching B-29 crews about the limits of altitude. The aircraft responsible was the Nakajima Ki-44. American intelligence called it the Tujo. Japanese pilots knew it as the Shikiai, the Devil Quiller. It was not elegant. It was not forgiving. It was built for one purpose only: to climb fast and kill bombers. The Ki-44 could reach 28,000 feet in under 8 minutes. At altitude where the air thinned and B-29 gunners struggled with oxygen deprivation and frozen sights, a single Shu-Ki could make repeated firing passes with alarming freedom. Its armament, heavy machine guns or 20mm cannon, was devastating at close range. Worse still were the ramming attacks. Beginning in August 1944, Japanese pilots had begun deliberately colliding with B-29s after expending their ammunition. This was not formal kamikaze doctrine. It was arithmetic. One fighter for one bomber was an acceptable exchange when the bomber cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and carried 11 men trained for months. At Narimasu Airfield near Tokyo, the 47th Sentai practiced the tactic deliberately. Intelligence estimated they had already destroyed at least 3 B-29s by ramming and damaged several more beyond repair. On this morning, A-52 carried 6 tons of high explosive bombs. The target was Tokyo's port facilities. Weather aircraft reported clear skies. That meant visual bombing. It meant the formation would have to fly straight and level. It meant time, exactly what Japanese interceptors needed. The briefing had been blunt. 62 B-29s would take part. Intelligence predicted 9 would not return. At 11:58, the formation crossed the Japanese coast. Radar stations on Honshu picked them up immediately. Air raid sirens began to howl across Tokyo. At Narimasu, ground crews were already running. Fighters warmed on the line. At exactly noon, the first Ki-44s lifted off, turning southeast toward the incoming bombers. 43 fighters. No B-29 had ever faced that many on a single mission. The first appeared as a speck at 12,000 yards. Chen watched it through his optical sight as it climbed almost vertically through scattered cloud. Wings became visible. Then the blunt radial cowling of a Ki-44. At 27,000 feet, the fighter rolled inverted and dived. 3 more followed. Chen rotated the upper forward turret. The remote system allowed him to aim guns mounted 15 feet away. A mechanical computer corrected for airspeed, altitude, and the bomber's own motion. Revolutionary technology, but temperamental in extreme cold. The lead Ki-44 opened fire at 800 yards. Tracers arced upward. Chen fired. The turret hammered. Streams of .50 caliber rounds tore through empty sky. The fighter snapped, rolled, and vanished beneath the formation. No hits. By 12:07, the formation was fully engaged. Fighters attacked from every quadrant. The standard tactic was a high side pass, diving through the bombers at 400 miles per hour, then braking hard to escape defensive fire. Ramming attacks were different. A call came from the cockpit. A fighter at 2 o'clock high. Chen swung the turret. The Ki-44 was lining up precisely. 700 yards. He fired a 3-second burst. The armor-piercing incendiaries walked across the fighter's path. The engine exploded. Black smoke poured from the cowling. The aircraft rolled inverted and fell away, trailing fire. Chen's first confirmed kill. He did not react. 2 more fighters were already maneuvering. The right blister gunner engaged one. The tail gunner called another, closing from 6 o'clock low. Chen slaved the lower aft turret and fired. Missed. The tail gunner took over, stitching rounds across the fighter's wing root. The Ki-44 shuddered, shed metal, and went into a flat spin. The bombers reached the initial point at 12:19. This was the most dangerous moment. 6 minutes straight and level while bomb sights synchronized. No evasive maneuvers, no course changes. 14 Ki-44s formed 3,000 feet above the formation. They orbited, positioning carefully. At 12:21, they rolled in. Pairs attacked from 10 o'clock high and 2 o'clock high simultaneously. Fire split. Confusion followed. One Ki-44 flew directly into converging streams of .50 caliber fire from multiple bombers. Its canopy shattered. It collided with its wingmen. Both disintegrated. Then came the ramming attack. One fighter did not break. Chen poured fire into its engine. Smoke trailed, but it kept coming. At 12:22, it struck the number 3 engine of A-52. The impact sounded like a hammer on steel. The propeller tore free. The bomber yawed violently. Warning lights flared. 2 engines were shut down. The aircraft dropped out of formation. Alone. 3 more fighters peeled off to finish it. Standard doctrine demanded damaged bombers be destroyed quickly. Chen waited for the computer to calculate. 800 yards. 600. He fired. The fighter's canopy exploded. It fell away. Another came from 5 o'clock level. The tail gunner fired until his ammunition ran dry. Chen took over, firing manually as hydraulics failed. The Ki-44's wing folded. It broke apart. Then a third attacker lined up at 3 o'clock high. Its guns were silent. A ramming run. The fighter struck the number 1 engine. Fuel sprayed. Shrapnel ripped through the wing. The B-29 now had 1 functioning engine. 12 Japanese fighters were forming for a final wave. Inside the bomber, the temperature dropped further. Chen's oxygen mask froze to his face. Ice coated his sight. Hydraulics were failing. Ammunition was nearly gone. The attackers split into 3 groups of 4. Wolfpack tactics. Against a crippled aircraft, it was execution. One by one, Chen and the remaining gunners fought them off. By instinct, by exhaustion, by fractions of seconds. Fighters fell trailing smoke. Wings tore loose. Engines seized. By the time the last Ki-44 turned away, 14 Japanese fighters were gone. 14. No bomber crew in the Pacific had ever recorded such a number in a single mission. But victory meant nothing. A Square 52 was limping home on one engine, 2 men dead, systems failing, fuel critically low. For 11 hours, they flew, over open ocean, over darkness, over mathematics that did not favor survival. An engine was restarted without oil. It bought minutes, then failed. Equipment was jettisoned. Fuel was cross-fed. Heating was shut down. The wounded froze. One gunner died quietly hours after the fighting ended. At 10:00 p.m., with Saipan in sight, the final engine coughed and died. The bomber became a glider. Landing gear failed. Hydraulics were gone. The aircraft touched down hard, slid, tore itself apart, and stopped in darkness and sparks. 10 men climbed out alive. The aircraft was a total loss. When I read the final line of the report, I paused for a long time. Mission completed. This was the reality of high-altitude bombing over Japan. Not clean lines on maps, not abstract tonnage dropped, but freezing men, failing machines, and skies so crowded with danger that survival depended on endurance as much as firepower. The B-29 was never invincible. On that morning, it was merely stubborn enough to refuse to die. And the sky, briefly, became the most lethal place on Earth. That is why this mission still matters. Not for its kill count, not for its statistics, but because it exposes the true cost of air war, measured not in bombs dropped, but in the narrow margins between failure and survival. Margins measured in seconds, degrees of temperature, and the steady hands of a 22-year-old gunner staring into a frozen sky.